today we will basically show how Microsoft creates artificial or self-generated, self-funded demand for their AI cloud under Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft invests in OpenAI starting 2019. What did it give them? Cloud credits. So Microsoft here owns 49% of OpenAI. OpenAI here runs ChatGPT, etc., because they are backboned by Microsoft's major resources. So usage of ChatGPT by everyone starting late 2022 results in Microsoft compute demand going up, and then they go and they buy more GPUs to build more data centers, and they buy GPUs from Nvidia. And it's all good because Microsoft reports great results, sales plus earnings, and Azure growth. Note that Microsoft lost the search engine wars, the social media wars, and the smartphone wars. So maybe they don't want to lose the cloud/AI cloud wars on top. So I have some numbers here that I crunched up, and these numbers show OpenAI's losses using Microsoft financial statements to get there. So in 2025, Microsoft reported almost 5 billion in other losses, and they say it's mostly because of OpenAI losses, and Microsoft owns 49% of that, as we've said. And because it's 49 and not more than 50, it is reported under the equity method. We can see how these losses exploded as OpenAI's revenues so do their losses. So in this little table, I work my way to adjust for actual OpenAI financial year losses. Because these were under 49%, then we get to actual OpenAI losses. And because Microsoft's financial year ends June 30th, we had to make some adjustments, and we cut up OpenAI losses by half years, and you see the losses that I did not cut them up 50-50 because OpenAI revenues have been growing exponentially, and so have their losses. This is almost a third. In fact, every second half is 2/3. Every first half is 1/3. And this is why you see the same year, obviously, second half, OpenAI expected to lose more. And now we get to OpenAI losses by full years. We only have full years here. Financial year 23, 1.2 billion. Financial year 24, 5 billion. First half of 2025, 6.5. And we're still expecting H2 2025. So let's get back to our flow chart. Microsoft here reports sales and earnings. It supports its major capex program because obviously we are growing, the sector is growing, demand for AI is massive, AI compute, and this results in more demand for Nvidia GPUs, and Nvidia makes big profits. However, OpenAI is losing money, needs more funding, raised 2 rounds this year, billions and billions every time to plug the hole. And Microsoft spends big on AI capex, reports the sales and the profits here, but does not report. So the point here is that Microsoft's major capex investments do not flow through the income statement, they flow through the cash flow. So this leaves the income statement unburdened mostly by these major capex investments and allows them to report these profits. Fine, you might say, okay, they are depreciating those GPUs and data centers according to their useful lives. Well, I don't think we know exactly what their useful lives are going to be, especially when they change them from 4 years to 6, and by doing so, reducing their depreciation figures. That's number one. Number two is these sales here are self-funded, which means if Microsoft stops funding OpenAI, which, as we've said, is loss-making, and I think all chatbots slash LLMs are loss-making. So if Microsoft, etc., VC, Sovereign Wealth, Masasan, etc., stops funding OpenAI, then OpenAI stops working, goes bankrupt, has to change their whole business, and demand for compute will crash. So Microsoft sales will crash mostly because it's operated and so many things are, and demand for Nvidia GPUs will crash. So let's just write this down. Alternative scenario. 1. Microsoft stops funding loss making OpenAI. In the scenario that OpenAI fails as a business, and we'll get into the details of how that can happen and what the scenario are in another video. In the scenario that Microsoft stops funding OpenAI, then much less compute will be required of OpenAI, which is supplied by Microsoft. Then Microsoft's reported Azure sales will crash, and Microsoft will need less AI data centers slash Nvidia's GPUs because they won't need to power all that compute. And you see the whole cycle reverse. So Sorosian boom bust cycle. Let's just try to draw the bust cycle of the whole process, the back end, because I think we've talked about the boom part and you all kind of understand it. So this is what I would expect to be the setup before things start to blow up. Markets diverge too much from actual fundamentals. Expectations are too far from reality. Everything is in a kind of twilight zone. An event happens. Cycle starts to turn and becomes from self-reinforcing on the upside, becomes self-reinforcing on the downside. So this is what I would expect to happen. Companies pull back from AI-related projects. Meanwhile, existing AI apps like chatbots are failing because of the business model and the numbers that we talked about in this video previously. Hyperscales then start becoming forced buyers, reduce prices, their margins crash, and have problems. Imagine a company like CoreWeave, which is a third-party AI cloud provider backed by Nvidia in a very questionable way, and they don't make any money now, and they owe a lot of money, and they sign deals with big hyperscalers, and they get these big hyperscalers like Microsoft get to outsource compute by tapping into CoreWeave's data centers. But CoreWeave isn't really making any money. They're just signing deals, revenue is spiking, but they're not making any money. So what will happen? What happens if compute prices drop? Let's leave this video here and follow for more videos.